So, Mark Paske, ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to let you talk a little bit about yourself, and it is with a little bit of a bio. But yeah, thank you so much for being here.
Yeah, my pleasure. So I grew up in the Northeast. I grew up in New Jersey, where I was born. Spent most of my life here, with the exception of 3 years living as an expat in Singapore when I was 9 to 12 years old, which was a life-changing event for me and for my family at that time to move to Singapore. It was 1980. I might as well have told my friends I was moving to the moon. So that was life altering and really helped shape my perspective of what the world could be and could offer to you, and the variety of things that were out there to experience. And that's kind of an early glimpse of kind of what our parents did for my sister and I, and bringing us on adventures with them. And they grew up, their roots are in Western New York and Buffalo, New York. Both grew up in working class type families, but had a huge value on really core values that were rooted somewhat in faith, but somewhat in just being good people, and also having a sense for adventure. And that was definitely a part of the childhood experience that I had growing up. And then I've spent most of my working career in the Northeast, based out of just outside New York City, and have been in technology sales for about the last 25 years or so.
What's your title right now at the company you're at?
I'm a managing director for Fortra, which is a leading cybersecurity company, and have responsibility for a couple of parts of our business. Our large strategic customers are defense and intelligence community customers, and then also our financial services customers.
Some big, scary industries to have to provide security for, and safety for.
Well, fortunately for everybody involved, I don't have to do any of the providing. We just have to find the people who need some help, and we have really smart people who actually design the products and provide the services that help them defend their brands and their data and their people.
I get it. I like it because I feel that a little bit myself. I don't really have to worry about how the podcast comes along because I just have creative people who I get to talk to, and that's the basis of it. I don't have to be great. You got to be great.
That's right. Surround yourself with smart people.
All the pressure's off. You mentioned one thing with your parents that like meaning and impact, going back to like faith, but then they set the standard for you as far as like values go and meaning. Where do you think they got that from? Because they obviously had structure for you.
Clearly, it's their family of origin. I think there's a bit of Western New York in there, which is, for me, hard work, meets good values, meets likes to have a little bit of fun, and I think all that is present. And then I think their families always had a premium on doing the right things, working hard, being a good citizen, being a good family member, spouse, brother, sister, whatever, what have you. And that has cascaded, through the generations. So I think it's you can trace it right back to family of origin, and I feel very appreciative of the fact that I'm a part of this big extended family on both sides.
And your wife too?
And my wife, who I met here in northern New Jersey, she's we grew up in towns next door to each other. We met about 12 years ago, and it turned out we had a number of interesting connections when we met. One of which was her godfather and uncle, who had a close relationship with a mentor of mine, and ended up doing a little back channel checking on me. I learned after the fact, which we had some fun with. I did some back channel checking on their family at the same time, so did a little flip the script on that one. But yeah, we both grew up in the same roughly the same area. Both went to Catholic schools for high school, and girls school, and so had very similar family values, similar upbringings, and a lot of common threads there in terms of how we were raised.
That's remarkable. It's amazing how like common thread again, like support system and that structure.
No
We
doubt.
talked about this a little bit the last time that we talked about just when you were saying that you don't belong here. I was like, we talk probably when we do talk, it's usually at least an hour at a time, and we spend at least 50% of that with you giving me family updates and just how things are going, which is, yeah, you love family, you love your kids, you adore them, yeah, which is
Yeah.
special.
Yeah, very very fortunate to have great family around us, close by enough to see them on the regular. And as you said, yeah, so very very also feel very lucky that both my kids who are now young adults pursuing their own careers. My son is in New Hampshire, my daughter is in Atlanta, so they're a little bit of a distance away, but still feel very connected to them, and have some other immediate family that's close by that we can see that's within a 20-30 minute drive.
It's remarkable. It's nice having family close. My sister, for the second time in her life, has now moved farther away than all my siblings, and it's interesting trying to figure out how often you're going to see somebody who you used to see all the time.
Yeah, no doubt. It brings a different element. We were distributed at one point. My sister actually, who lives in the house that we grew up in, she bought that from my parents about 15 years ago. She had her first child, her son, who's my nephew and godson, in California. My brother-in-law was in the Marines at the time, stationed at Camp Pendleton. So they were on the West Coast. I was out there briefly during that time for about a year, but they were out there for about 9 years. But then they came back, and we've been really lucky to have been super close to family and friends in the area here since then.
Yeah, it's special. That's really special. I want to hear about some of these common threads that you drew between you and some of the other people that we've talked about.
Yeah, listening to your prior podcast was kind of a humbling experience because you have a who's who. You have two former fighter pilots turned very successful corporate executives. You have a world class piano player. You have a NASCAR driver. You have a Navy SEAL. I mean, you have these incredible people. But as I listened to them, I was just kind of listening to their messages and kind of some of the questions that you asked them. Some of the common threads that really stood out. Actually, probably the biggest one was the humility of everybody, considering the resumes that they have. I thought just, and I know two of them personally as well. I thought they just came across just incredibly humble and real. But also the topic of vulnerability and how vulnerability has played a part in their lives, in their livelihoods at some point as well. It was an interesting to, and kind of hearing all of them talk about themselves as being unspectacular. But meanwhile, you look at them and you look at the accomplishments that they have, and these are incredibly accomplished people. So I think the themes of humility and kind of knowing yourself, that I think that really at the core of that is self-awareness. Also having a good sense of humor about yourself, which is a good attribute to have too. But I think the vulnerability one is the one that really stood out the most to me.
Why do you think that stood out to you personally?
Well, I think as kind of some of the things that you asked me to think about for this conversation, and I think about my journey in my life and how vulnerability was not really a part of it until the recent, I guess, part of my life. So I've been on the planet for 53 years now, and I would say that was a development that was relatively recent. I was not comfortable with vulnerability most of my life, typical boy, and actually was very shy and introverted growing up. And most of the people that know me now really don't buy that. They don't believe it because they experience me differently. But a lot of that was I was just not comfortable being vulnerable. And as I went through life, and you go through your ups and downs, when there were downs, I stifled those emotions of vulnerability and wish that I hadn't. But I didn't have the outlet, I didn't have the mechanism, didn't have the skills to be able to do anything other than that. So I think for me, one of the greatest signs of maturity and kind of feeling good about where you are in your life is to be comfortable with vulnerability and to not look at it as a weakness, but actually it's an absolute strength. And once I started to embrace that and learn more about it, it became something that opened up many wonderful relationships in my life. And one of them is the friendship that you and I have developed.
In other ways, because I know you're part of a men's group with some of the, well, I don't know if it's just a men's group, but you're part of a group of who's of leaders and people who have, I mean, like you said, the vulnerability, but not easy for any of us, not easy for any of them. And yet it's like when you get in the space with each other, it's like the walls just come down.
Yeah, there's a group of guys that you mentioned that it kind of has snowballed over the last 7 years in terms of the numbers and the people, but the common threads are just hard chargers in life who It started with just doing basic challenges each month, physical workout challenges, and it started a little bit before the COVID era, and then was a really important thing during that time as we were all kind of locked away at home and looking for things to do. But this is a group of really outstanding individuals who have a lot of common threads in terms of hard charger in terms of their careers and also trying to test themselves and to put themselves in uncomfortable situations. And these monthly challenges that we've been doing are exactly that. And so as we've added people, they've added more dynamics to it. Sometimes the group has branched off and other people have helped each other professionally. Sometimes we've helped each other personally. My son was moving across the country. I needed to ship his car. I put it out to the group. Literally within 2 minutes, I had a contact with somebody who can pick the car up in a day or two and help move it out at a reasonable cost. So those types of things are a part of that group too. But I think more so, it's more about the life philosophy that pulls everybody together, coming from different walks of life. A lot of military veterans are in there, but there's some other normal civilians like myself and a few other guys that I know that are a part of it. And that group is definitely been a place to find some grounding, find some challenges, definitely some humility and vulnerability in there. Usually getting made fun of for things. There's a lot of good camaraderie and kind of locker room type of support and humor that goes along with it.
Do you think so? I mean, you kind of just touched on the growth, like the workouts and stuff like that, that you kind of force each other into doing. But like from a learning perspective, what have you learned or challenged each other on? Do you guys try and read similar books or tell each other what you're going through as far as learnings?
Yeah, I'd say it's multi-layered. I mean, the learning for yourself is really about getting outside of your comfort zone and kind of taking on a challenge, especially when it's something that you didn't want to do. Like the worst one is when somebody's like, "Oh, it's time for a burpee competition this month." There's nobody on the planet that loves burpees, but this particular group decides to jump into it. One of the guys actually took a crack at the world record for burpees in a 24-hour period, which he eclipsed. I think he did over 11,000, but the Guinness Book actually didn't fully accept all of them, so he wasn't able to record the record. So that's on the extreme side. But I think key learnings are outside of the surface level stuff, which is just kind of the bravado of these challenges and pushing through things that you're not comfortable doing. There's another guy in the group who runs an organization that does a 2-month challenge at the beginning of the year called the Deliberate Discomfort Challenge. And that is multifaceted. Actually, for 60 straight days, you have to do all of the domains each and every day, or you're out. There's no making up for it if you didn't do it the day before. And that includes reading a book a week, writing a gratitude journal every day. There's a physical component, which is a gym-based workout and an outdoor workout each day. Getting in contact with people each day live. So that's 60 straight days having a live conversation with someone that you haven't talked to in a while. And then I think I covered all the domains there. So that was a challenge. That was because each thing unto itself, there's a meditation component to it too, which I forgot. So each of those unto themselves is not a challenge, but when you have to do them every day for 60 straight days, no matter what your work travel is or what else you have going on, it takes a lot of planning. And there were definitely moments during that when I did that a couple of years ago where you learned you've got more in the tank than what you think is the number one thing. And also the benefit of doing each of those things, which is especially the gratitude journal and the reaching out to other contacts that you hadn't talked to in a while. I'd been doing meditation and mindfulness for a while, so that one was always part of my repertoire. The gratitude journal was a powerful one, and just being so appreciative and being aware of what you should appreciate each day, it became easier and easier to write the gratitude journal.
Yeah, I remember doing a similar gratitude journal during COVID was probably the most difficult period to write more than a couple sentences.
Oh yeah. Yeah, but I think those are, finding things like that to do, and people to connect with that are like-minded. It just reminded me of the power of those connections with other people, and ultimately, again, it's those connections and those people in that group is part of what led you and I to connect.
Yeah, yeah, very much so. It's amazing how human we all are once you just start to break down a little bit of the discomfort. When you were going through some of the stuff that I had sent you before, do you remember Grief Story?
Yeah.
How did you feel about that one?
Yeah, and you'd asked me to kind of explore my journey with grief, and at first I thought, well, look, I've been so fortunate in my life. Like, I don't really have anything to complain about. The grief and the experiences I've had pale in comparison to what other people have gone through. So that was my initial reaction. And I thought, well, what would I talk about if I were asked the question? And I think for me, because of the strength of my family and friends and the people that I've had access to lean on, really my story is not about something really difficult that I had to overcome. Although there certainly were challenges and losing friends at a young age that you didn't expect to. So having a couple of teammates of mine from college die unexpectedly. One in sadly in a fight that ended up in violent and which was totally unexpected and unprovoked on his part. Another one died by suicide a year after we graduated. So losing friends, teammates at an early age is certainly one form of grief that you go through. And then you go through life. And, having lost my father 3 years ago, who was my hero and my guiding light in many ways in my life, and how to be a person, how to be a man, you process those things. So I think for me, the grief story kind of goes back to the vulnerability thing, which is when I went through in early years and young adulthood, went through situations that caused grief. I didn't have a good outlet. Most of my outlet was physical at that time. So, go for a run or go to the gym or go for a hike in the woods, but I wasn't engaging or processing things, and I really wasn't kind of embracing the feeling that was going on, and stifling emotions, we know, is not a great thing to do. So learning what outlets were for me that were useful, and then embracing those outlets was kind of led me down that path. And when I did, what I learned about that process of opening up was that not only did I get help in unexpected ways from unexpected people in some cases, but I also felt better connected, and it helped with the healing for me. And that I started to learn that sharing this vulnerability was actually a strength and not the weakness that I perceived it was. That then led into wanting, and part of why I accepted the invitation to talk about this with you was, if there's somebody out there who might be suffering in some way silently, to let them know that it's okay, right, to feel that way. And if you are, there's lots of resources and outlets for you if you're really in the hole and you're really feeling bad. But just know that it's temporary, and that feeling is not going to last with you forever. And there are many people that care about you, and if you reach out to them and you have a meaningful conversation, you're going to be surprised by the kind of support that you get.
Yeah, that's awesome. Your support system, who you kind of mentioned, you'd be surprised the kind of people and the kind of places where it comes from, where that support comes from.
Yeah. I think for me, there was a couple of high school friends that I opened up to when I was going through a divorce. And this is about 13 years ago now. And I was embarrassed by it. I thought, here, how am I supposed to, go to work and hold my head up high if I can't even keep a family together? And there's many reasons why those things happening. There was nothing salacious about my journey, my story there. And but I was still grieving the loss of a relationship, and grieving the loss of a family, the structure of the family. And so I went to a couple high school friends and just told them how I was feeling. I just couldn't believe how great they were, that it wasn't about um, what I thought I might be embarrassed by, or that they felt differently, or in their opinion of me lowered in some way or altered in a negative way. It was probably the opposite, that just total embracing me as a person, being an outlet to kind of hear how I was doing, providing support for me and my family as a total, and just kind of the love and support and acceptance that I got from them encouraged me to just kind of continue on and know that things were going to be okay, and I had this amazing network to access when needed.
And was your dad kind of that character for you for a long time?
I think so. I think because he was such an outstanding human in my mind, and he was my hero. And I was lucky to have this person, my such an important person, and as your father in your life. I probably held him up on a pedestal to a large extent as well, which was kind of setting myself up in a way to not be able to kind of reach for what made him human at the end of the day. But what I came to really appreciate about him after he died 3 years ago was what people said about him. And it's that what they said was not things weren't things that I wasn't aware of, but it was just really interesting to hear the universal kind of reaction to him, which was he had this amazing gift of being able to make the person he was talking to feel like they were the most important person on the planet in that moment. He was just an incredible listener, and he was never distracted by anything, and was so free and comfortable with himself and who he was that he was able to really connect with people in a very unique way. And so a lot of people sent me photos. It could have been him with my cousin's kid when he was a baby. It could have been him talking to our great aunt, or it's just all these pictures of him leaning in and connecting with people. And I thought, man, what an amazing, I just experienced it. Like that was just my life. And that's just what my relationship was like for him. But to have people point that out, what it told me was the power of connectedness is so important, and your ability to impact people in small moments like that, not big moments, and not temporarily, but just in terms of how you engage with them, and how you embrace them. And so that I was really grateful, and was able to kind of give myself a little bit of grace also for maybe not always being like that. And it was something that I've reflected on over the last couple of years, especially. But I'd say that was, probably one of the bigger things, is having people share stories of someone that you love that are so meaningful to you because you experienced it yourself as well.
Yeah. Yeah. I think it makes it in a way, kind of validates the way that you're feeling in the moment of, you're maybe putting him on a pedestal because you're like, well, it's the day that we're celebrating him. But then you realize, oh, other people have been celebrating this guy all week before they came to this, just thinking about all these amazing moments that they had with him.
Yeah, it was really cool to hear, a chorus of people, and they were all independent from each other too. So to have so many people point that out. Part of it too was, I joke a little bit. He had a hearing disability from his time serving in the Army, and he was a field artillery officer. So his hearing was not great most of my life. He probably had, more than 50% hearing degradation, wore hearing aids, but some of the leaning in was because he really had to in order to hear what you were saying.
He was bound to look interested.
That's right. That's right.
How old were you when you guys moved overseas? When
We moved when I was 9. Uh,
9.
yeah, 9 years old.
How old was your sister?
She was 2 years older, so she was 11 when we moved. Yeah.
Now, I wonder, to a certain extent, do you think that that move happened because your family and your mom like saw the ability for you? They're like, he's 9, but he's a strong person. Like this will be good for him.
I don't know. I don't know. I'd have to ask them. I think that they trusted that we as a family unit would um, be able to take advantage of the experience and the opportunity. And I trusted both my parents. They were excited about the move, as stressful it is moving, around the world. It was just such an unbelievably different experience. It wasn't like we were moving to another state. You're moving to literally the other side of the world that none of us knew anything about. And we had no idea how great an experience it was going to be for us. But I think I just trusted my parents, and I think they knew that we were going to be solid as a family unit. And also, being an expat in 1980 was a pretty awesome experience because you go there and everybody else is an expat there too, especially Singapore, which is a tremendous melting pot. So you're in. It's not like you don't have other people who haven't been through it before. You're surrounded by people who have, and they embrace you and bring you right in. So immediately it felt like a warm hug as soon as we got there.
Nah, I wouldn't have imagined that. That's pretty neat. What were the schools like over there? Were they all on base?
No, this was an American school, the Singapore American School, which is still, it was so many years ago now, but still vivid in my mind that, what it looked like, what, just the aromas coming from the cafeteria, like all those things are tremendously vivid. So it was mostly Americans. There were some families in Singapore that were not American that sent their kids to the American school. So we had some friends that were from New Zealand. We had some friends that were Australian. There were some kids from Pakistan there as well. So we really met a total cross section of kids from all over the place.
You were having the real American experience of melting pots.
No doubt, no doubt.
That's cool. How old were you? Remind me, how long were you guys there? How long was he based there?
Yeah, we were there for 3 years. So I came back for my seventh grade year, and we moved right back to the town that we had came from. We had rented our house when we left, and came back and moved right back into the same house.
Oh, wow. Have you, when you were thinking about coming on here, did you have any like thoughts going back of like what it could have, should have?
I wish we would have stayed longer. We didn't want to go. We went kicking and screaming, and then it was kicking and screaming and coming back. And we had an opportunity to extend. He was working in banking at the time, and so he had another opportunity to go to Hong Kong, and we didn't because my sister was going into high school. But that would have been an amazing experience as well. So, but we were very lucky. That was not something in either of my parents' backgrounds. They came from, like I said earlier, humble kind of blue collar beginnings, and nothing in their backgrounds would have said, we're moving to Southeast Asia in 1980, but we did it, and it was an incredible journey for us to go on as a family.
That's amazing. Yeah, I can't imagine what that must have been like for you, especially at that age. I mean, talking about it's like almost like formative years before the period of life when most people think of as like the most formative years.
It's the only word I can give you is it was cool, man. It was really cool. And I made some friends over there that we're still friends with today. And the biggest thing is when you're an American and we're disadvantaged by geography, we don't run into a lot of other cultures, because of how big our country is. But you go to another part of the world where cultures are literally colliding within a very small geography. You rapidly learn about the world and how the rest of the world works, and it's not about playing wiffle ball and having grilled cheese sandwiches. Like, you're getting a very different experience, and you also learn what it's like to not be the majority, and to be part of a minority group there and population that was in Singapore. So those are important learnings, to have an appreciation for other cultures, other people, and to also understand that the world is way bigger than the little town I grew up in New Jersey.
How, so you and your wife met when you were how old?
So my wife that I'm married to now, we met.
And what's her name?
Her name is Kate.
Okay.
Yeah. So we met about 13 years ago. I was about 40, and when we met, and then yeah, so we've had a wonderful relationship, getting to know each other and our families. My kids have been embraced her holistically. They have their own relationship with her. My son and my daughter will text her and talk with her independently for me, and so yeah, so it's been a great blending of family.
That's awesome. My sister's like that with my wife. They text each other way more often than I even talk to my sister. It's like, well, this is all right. I guess it's gonna be like that, you know? With your kids, I know you said they're kind of spread all over the place now.
Yeah.
They grew up in a house that you guys live in now.
Uh, no, they grew up. We were in another house in the town next door. So yeah, they grew up in the town that I grew up in, but in a different home.
Gotcha.
Yeah,
For them, do you see like as a parent? Because I mean, from what I know about how much you talk about them, it feels like they're very self-sufficient in the way of they love having a relationship with you guys, but they've kind of charted their own course as well. Like they don't do what you do or
yeah,
what your wife does.
yeah. I'm pleasantly surprised by that. My son has lived in places dotted around the country, from Idaho to Utah to Arizona, and now back. He lives in New Hampshire, and so I what I really appreciate about him is his willingness to go out there and explore the world and try different things. I was even though I had that crazy experience living in Southeast Asia, I was a very reserved, very shy, very introverted kid. And so I tended to play it pretty conservatively, socially, and how I embraced the rest of the world, even though I had that experience and was fortunate to have that. And my daughter's more wired like me, a little bit more conservative, a little bit on that end of things. But she went to college down in South Carolina. So, it's a trend for sure. There's a lot of kids from the Northeast and from New Jersey in particular that are going to schools in the Southeast now. But I was pleasantly surprised that she wanted to. She really knew what she wanted. She wanted warm weather. She wanted a great nursing program, and she wanted to go see some big time college football. So SEC was good for her, and the University of South Carolina was a great spot for her. And then she wanted to stay down there. So the easy move would have been to come back and live closer to family and closer to where her mom is. But she's chosen her own path down there, and I'm really proud of her, and I'm really proud of my son for the journeys that they've embraced in their own lives and their willingness to go and branch out and live in different places.
Yeah, it's definitely a challenge to be away from your support system like that too. It definitely seems like you guys definitely lean on each other a lot in a good way.
And that surfaces from time to time, and that's when they know it's time to come home for a little bit. And they do that, and so they know that they're welcome back anytime, and we're glad to have them at the house. And um, also that they don't need to be here for extended periods of time. 2 or 3 days, or 3 or 4 days for them is they usually feel pretty good, and they get what they want from being here with my wife and I, and getting a few home cooked meals and going to see their grandmother, and then they get to go back to their own young adult lives.
I think it's remarkable how you've been able to build a family that is as supportive of each other as it seems like you were able to grow up in.
I That's the goal, right? But I think we all have a little bit of inferiority complex at times as parents, where you don't always feel prepared for the job and for life's up and downs. And so um and I'm definitely guilty of not having been a perfect parent. And it's probably the thing that I realized through some of the meditation and mindfulness work, and some of the gratitude journaling types of activities, that it's okay. Like, give yourself a little bit of grace. I think I was so wound up into wanting to be this perfect parent or perfect father, that you forget that you're a human being sometimes too, and that you do make mistakes, and that's okay. The intentions are good. But I had a mentor ask me, are you ready to accept the fact that you're not a perfect parent? Your parents were not perfect. There's no such thing. Once you're ready to do that, then you'll be able to move forward. And I was glad somebody took the opportunity to tell me that, because I think we as parents put so much pressure on ourselves to provide the right amount of support, not push your kids or pull them along, but kind of walk beside them. And that's the goal for me, is to just be a partner in the journey of their life, to be a resource for them, support them, but ultimately put them in a position where they can exercise good judgment, make good decisions for themselves, call upon their resources, their parents, their extended family when they need help, but to feel self-empowered, to feel like they can do it, and that it's okay for them to make some mistakes from time to time as well.
And I feel like there always seems to be at least one parent, one who seems to be more, you got this, hit me up if you need me, but you got this. And I've got 100% confidence in you. And the other who's like, we're here for you anytime you need anything, even if it's dinner.
Yeah. I'd say it's a constant tug of war. Like, I'd say I alternate between parental role, and my ex-wife and I, when we talk about the kids and kind of challenges that they have as young adults, we sometimes will flip roles a little bit, yeah, intentionally, or just because maybe one of us needs a break from it. But yeah, I think just being there, being in tune with them, and reading the smoke signals, but also being okay letting them be their own humans, and living their own lives.
How, as a parent, because obviously you have your own weaknesses as a young adult who's decided to procreate, but you've also got things that you enjoy yourself that you don't want to give up just for the sake of, yeah, I'm starting a family now. How do you feel like you did with that?
you know,
around the things that you really don't want to let go of because they
yeah,
mean something to you.
I would say this is a big area to give myself some grace on because I don't always feel like I, showed up as a parent the way that I wanted to in the early years or really any of the phases for them. Was I working too much? Did we have them in activities that were the right activities for them? Did I help support those activities enough? Or did I give them enough space? I think for me, always kind of second guessing those things a little bit, but I like to think that I tried to strike the right balance there, but and I had the right intentions. Um, and I don't really feel like I had to give up a lot, honestly. And I think maybe that to some extent, parents these days maybe give up too much and they revolve too much of their lives around the kids. And I heard I forget who it was. It was a podcast with an expert in family dynamics say, you have two types of families: family parents, the families that revolve around the kids, or the families that revolve around the adults. And you think about the people that and kind of observing how their families work. And there's pros and cons to both. It's not one is right and one is wrong. It's just which one are you? And we probably pivoted towards a little bit of making our life about the kids, but I think that worked for us, especially when they were young, and wanted to support them and give them a good life experience.
Yeah. What about what were some things that you were really into, even as an adult, or even as a parent that you were as a young adult?
I would say, and this kind of connects back to like the story of you know my grief journey, if you will, being outdoors. I mean, I just that to me that's my happy place. And my wife now jokes when it's cold and rainy outside, most people want to stay inside and read a book or watch a movie. I'm drawn to it, and actually in preparation for this, she asked me about it, and she said, "What do you think it really is? What is it about for you that makes you when it's cold and rainy? Other than on my mom's side, we're Scottish, and maybe there's some kind of Braveheart gene pool that I have going on there. For me, I think being outdoors, number one, connects. And there's a lot of science behind this, connecting to nature and getting disconnected and cutting the cord from all the connectivity that we have today. That's certainly one benefit. But also for me, when it's cold and rainy, it's almost like being in a sensory deprivation chamber.
Hmm.
There's many things that are just shut off. There's not a lot of people out there for one. But I find that I can find that kind of inner peace and inner quiet quickly because so many others, not cars to worry about, other things going on or other noises. You could just basically hear the rain in your own heartbeat and your own breath. And I've always enjoyed it. I've always enjoyed hiking or jogging or doing things outdoors, especially when it's inclement weather for some reason.
You don't get those feelings of like, did I take care of everything
I'm
before
not there, no,
during
because
this moment?
no one's looking for me.
That's fair. You've earned the quiet at that point.
Yeah, I'd say that's been consistent my whole life. My mom will tell stories of me being outdoors for hours and hours and hours, climbing trees. In particular, we'd go see her mom, my grandmother in Buffalo. I mean, within a half an hour, I'm up her tree, 30 feet, rappelling down with ropes. And same with our childhood home. Same when we moved to Singapore, rappelling off the house. There was something about being outdoors and climbing things that were just essential to my upbringing.
Do you was it like that growing up with like your sister, or was it kind of like you just something you want to do all by yourself?
I'd say me more than her, but we both grew up with an athletic background. And so, but she wasn't drawn to just hanging out in the woods. I'd say that's a little bit more, carving sticks and playing with ropes and climbing trees. That was more my domain than hers.
You're a natural Boy Scout.
Although I didn't love the organization that I like the forced organization. I love learning the skills and I like to earn badges, but I didn't like all the other stuff that went along with it. So I found that I kind of took some of those skills and just did them myself out in the woods.
Yeah, the pure bureaucracy, it doesn't exist in the forest.
That's right.
I want to go back to and we were talking about like meaning and impact. Did you have some time to think about that?
Yeah, I mean, I think meaning and impact for me has to do with um, the stifling of emotions and needing outlets and really yearning for them. So when I discovered mindfulness and I started, which kind of led me down a journey of meditation and ultimately to over the last number of years really studying stoicism. I thought that stoicism and mindfulness and I had experienced as a youngster moving to Singapore, seeing people meditate and seeing Buddhists, which you would not experience here in the States. So it got me thinking about what and starting to explore like what are those things and these ancient wisdoms that started to become really compelling to me. If it's worked for thousands of years, maybe I should explore it type of thing. And so for me, meaning and impact actually led me down that path where I'd say it's not really a spiritual journey or a faith-based journey, but more one of just self-discovery and understanding and knowing yourself, but also having some guiding principles. And that's part of why I like the Stoics. The Stoics, my first impression was this is about being devoid of emotion, to be staid, to be steady, unshakable, rock-like. That's not what it's about, right? And as you learn about it, you learn it's based in four fundamental values, all things that are important things and things that I grew up with, but also things that I can use as a guiding light for myself, and also ways to say, hey, look, it's okay if you make a mistake. It's okay if you're not perfect. And just get back to your roots, though. Don't let yourself drift too far. And in order to do that, leveraging um, that self awareness, which for me comes from basic things like doing box breathing exercises. It's pretty unbelievable how powerful it is just to breathe, let yourself breathe. And so when I have friends going through really intense things in their life, where it could be loss or grief or just something super intense, or now elder care, many of my friends are, we're taking care of our parents, and some of them, we're having to say goodbye to. And I'll just text them, just breathe right now. That's all you got to do. And it's pretty amazing what that does for you if you just let yourself breathe and really take big, deep breaths, and how these really intense emotions will wash over you when you do that.
Yeah, and you kind of mentioned this earlier as far as like coping, the writing habits, just letting your mind be still. Doesn't necessarily mean you need to sit down and write a book, but yeah, the breathing is definitely huge. I hadn't employed that before I got sick the first time, and I was like, wow, that really, I can't go to sleep until I get this down.
Yeah. Yeah. And you and I've talked about like the power of just doing a set of push-ups too. Like what does that do for you, and how does that make you feel? And just the kind of act of doing these, I think of them like almost like rituals, these things that you do for yourself that, kind of feed your body, your soul, your spirit. So I think for me, the meaning and incap comes down to having an awareness of what am I experiencing? And this, happens at work, it happens outside of work, and where I'm feeling an emotion intensely. And I've tried to learn to stop myself and say, what is at the root of that? What am I feeling right now? Like, why am I feeling that way? And what is causing that? And kind of just pausing, often, doing a little bit of breath work, or taking a walk outside, or just changing my setting and gaining that perspective. And I think of it as like, if you've ever written an angry email and you sat on it, and then the next day you're like, oh, thank God I didn't send that email. It's literally giving yourself that breath, get it out of your system in some way, maybe in a journal or a private chat with somebody, but then giving yourself some space and some grace to just kind of let that emotion wash through you.
Yeah, I think our spouses and our closest friends are really good about that too. If just can't don't want to overuse them, but I know that my wife's had heard me let out a lot of frustration, not directly at her, but just be able to get it somewhere other than the person who would probably go to otherwise.
Mm-hmm. No doubt, having those outlets and building those connections is crucial.
Yeah, yeah, it's especially hard for spouses to not overdo it with them and put too much on them that they haven't warranted.
Or having, the ideal for me would be having a uh, effective communication with each other where you can say it's too much right now. There's value in that too.
What do you mean?
Well, if you're feeling like you're putting a burden on your spouse or your partner, and I used to back to the kind of the old me of swallowing the emotions. And part of it was, I don't want to burden other people with them. But what if you just made an agreement where you said, if this is too much for you, can you just tell me?
Mm.
Because I worry that sometimes what I'm sharing might be too much, or maybe you're not equipped to help me with it, or maybe it's something that you just don't want to hear about right now because you had a long day too. And to kind of have more of that transparency in your communication as well.
Mm. Yeah, I definitely need to work on that. I like the way you put that. I definitely need to work on doing
Don't
that.
take anything that I've said this whole conversation as I'm an expert in any of it. These are all things I'm a work in progress on big time. And so I'm definitely not the authority on any of these.
Some methodologies, when you hear them, you're like, no, that feels right. That feels
Yep.
right.
Yeah.
It's kind of going back to, yeah, you were talking about like holidays, what are they called? Stoicisms. The holidays written a couple of really good books on stoicism. And yeah, sometimes you'll hear something that like a Marcus Aurelius said, and you're like, you know what? That just makes too much sense to be wrong. I'm gonna have to try that.
There's value in ancient wisdoms. There's a reason why these things have been around for a long time. What I like about what Ryan Holiday does is he has his daily newsletter, so you can serve it up in bite-sized chunks, little tiny ones, which is useful. But also the interpretation too, which is important for me because I just don't have the ability to sit there and read Marcus Aurelius and really sit with it. I just my brain doesn't work that way. But when I listen to someone else explaining it and kind of interpreting it,
Yeah.
I'm able to take the meaning from that. So yeah, I love his content. I'm a daily consumer of it.
Yeah, I literally didn't even know you're going to mention him, and I was reading him earlier today. And
Huh,
even the chapters that he writes, below the chapter name, it's literally it's like this one's about Epicurus. It's a quote by Epicurus, and that's before you even get to the beginning of the volume of the chapter itself.
yeah,
But yeah, because like you said, sometimes swallowing the entire chapter could be a little too much. But if I could just open and start with the quote of the person who's the knowledge is coming from, the wisdom's coming from. Like, okay, even that, I can sit on that, I can
yep.
digest that, and that's already helping me today.
That's a great practice. I keep his little coin on my desk. I don't know if you can see it on there.
Yeah, yeah,
But it's got my our four Stoic values in there. And so if I'm noodling on something, sometimes just grabbing the coin, feeling it between my fingers and thinking on something, it helps.
yeah. It's a that's something that I know. I share this with you. I've never been in the military. I'm just a huge fan of people that have put their bodies and skills on the line. Um, And that's one thing that is in the military community is the challenge courts. They're everywhere with every branch, and it's just like it's a form of currency to a degree, but it's because everybody kind of gets that there's a simple element of gotta feel it, gotta play with it just to get over through
I,
something
I'm
sometime.
not from that veteran community either, and you and I both have friends, and that's how we met with guys that are, and I grew up in the house of a veteran. But there's some other stuff to the challenge coins that I don't know. I think it involves beverages at bars as well. So I'm not the authority on that, but I have seen that from time to time.
Yeah, that and special favors as well. I've seen that before with friends as well. It's like, look, I need this done, or I need to be able to do this, or I need to go here. Here's a coin.
Yeah,
Let's make it happen. Which, yeah, I appreciate those little kind of things because as a fan of history, I can see Roman soldiers doing that way back when. You could just kind of see something like having happened at some point.
yes, I agree.
Somebody pinched the finger off of a coin with Caesar on it, and they were like, "Okay, how's that? Is that enough for you?" And what else do you want to share? Because I know I asked you to think about a couple of things as
Yeah.
well about sharing as far as like a message, having gone through some of this self-thought.
Yeah, I mean, you don't have to go through a heavy life experience. And I know you're leaning into one yourself head on. And I have a lot of respect for, how you live your life in the face of a big challenge, a physical challenge that you're having that's is with you all the time. You can have that in your life or have something, a loved one going through that, or it could just be everyday life. as we get older, we're going to go through, we're going to experience things. I think the thing that I would want my family and friends to know, and anybody out there who might be suffering in silence, is it's okay. You don't, it's not permanent. It's a temporary, these intense emotions that we have, and there's outlets. And I think finding ways that you're comfortable with to look for those outlets. And for some people, it's getting a workout. For actually interesting, two of the other guests that you had on your podcast both were practitioners of jujitsu, and that was a very important part of my life of the last 15 years, as well as with my son. It's one of the activities that we did together. Um, and so finding things that help you, and for me, they've always been movement related, being outside, taking a walk in the sun or the rain, doing jujitsu or just moving, finding something that helps you kind of get outside of whatever that heaviness is of the thing that you're wearing around right now. I think that's really important. I think another one that's underrated is finding ways to laugh and have humor. My son is an expert in gallows humor, I would say. I think it comes partially from his days as an EMT. My daughter's a nurse now, so she's got a little bit of that as well. So I think, using humor and laughing, and sometimes the laughing is at yourself. If I've done something ridiculous or just dumb with my kids, like they know that they can make fun of me right away because they know I'm going to laugh at myself. And I would say, 10, 15 years ago, I probably wasn't capable of that. So, I think the learning and the growth comes from starting with giving yourself some grace, finding things that, identifying kind of what it is that you feel you need. Do I need a conversation? Do I need to go for a run? Do I need to go climb a mountain? What do I think I need right now? And then just go and do it for yourself. And I think not overthinking things. I'm a world-class ruminator, and beater up of myself. And I think many people are like that. And I think if you can help yourself through that moment by embracing grace and giving yourself grace, and then surrounding yourself with those things and people that help you through those moments. Those are the things that I've learned that have been most helpful for me, and why I try to connect with my friends and do outreach to people who I think might just need a call or a quick check-in. And as I mentioned, doing that 60 straight days of having a meaningful conversation with somebody, not a text, not an email, but a live conversation, was really eye-opening. And it was, sometimes I got energy and I got something from them. Sometimes they needed something and I wouldn't have known if I hadn't called. So, I think just, don't be afraid to pause and embrace those people and those things in life that help you.
For you, was it easiest when you did these as like video calls so you could see their emotions, kind of going back to like humor and humanity?
That's an interesting question. I did not do video calls for the first batch of them because I think I wasn't sure what it was going to be like, and maybe had a little bit of fear because some people I hadn't talked to in a long time, and I think to protect myself, I did them as regular calls. Also, I think there's some value in just an old school phone call. So much of what we do in our lives now is video, and I do find value and just a walk and a talk. Maybe you put your earpods in or AirPods in, and you go for a walk and have a conversation with someone. It can be really helpful. But the initial ones I did not do on video, and then I'd say the second wave was more video and orientation. I think when you and I first spoke, we probably were just on a regular phone call. We didn't do a video chat for a little while.
Yeah, I think you get so much from hearing the cadence of somebody's voice, even if you can't see their eyes. I know I get a lot personally out of sitting across from somebody and seeing
Yeah,
them, but that's not everyone. Not everybody likes being looked at in the
yeah,
face when they're talking, especially if you haven't talked to them in a very long time. But voice and cadence is huge.
yeah, no doubt. And it's luckily I don't really have to look at myself other than if I peek down at the bottom of my screen right now. You and other people have to look at me, so that you guys have to deal with that. There's nothing I can do there.
But your hair, though, is just
I'm using AI for the hair.
it's getting into everything now, even into hair gel.
That's right. That's right. Actually, when I was signing into this Zoom, you've got all these avatar options now, so you can really craft it and make it look like whatever you want.
Yeah, so going back to if anybody's listening here, go start with phone calls to everybody first.
Well, I'd say whatever you're comfortable with. Like it, maybe it's a call, maybe the email is the easiest thing for you to do, and maybe you've got an unresolved something or other with somebody from your past, and that's just the thing that's weighing you down. And if you're like me, you've been probably ruminating on it for many years. Um, but I think putting yourself out there a little bit, it takes a little bit of courage, and I think if you embrace that and you do the reach out, you're going to be so blown away by what you find out there and the people that you know in your life that really know you, that are worth knowing. Um, you're going to be blown away by what you find in terms of the support that comes from just being connected.
Yeah. And it's literally just happened a few days ago. I reached out to a friend who's like a brother to me, and he was in the car, had just gotten out of the car with his now fiance, and just told him like I was like just wanted to catch up. Saw it was your birthday, and just wanted to instead of shooting you a text, just wanted to check in on you, see how you're doing. What are you doing today?
Yeah.
And that turned into a really great conversation. And yeah, didn't even plan on it happening. But to your point, you never know how much somebody else is thinking of you and how much they just we were hoping to have the opportunity, but just maybe hadn't gotten around to it yet. Doesn't mean they didn't want to. Just sometimes in life, in many ways, you just kind of have to take initiative. So,
Yeah, and it always feels good to hear from someone unexpectedly too. And it's like if you ever get a letter in the mail, that feels awesome that somebody took the time to write that. Or if just putting a text out there or a phone call or leaving a voicemail for someone you haven't talked to in a while. When you get them, doesn't that feel great? And so every once in a while, somebody will pop into my mind that I haven't talked to in a while. Maybe I'll just send them a dumb little meme, but it gets the same point across. It's just a way to keep that connective tissue going with people, and just the act of making the connection happen. You may not even speak to them or engage with them. That often feels good too.
yeah. Couple of George Costanza memes, and anybody's bound to catch on to it's time to it's time to
It
reconnect.
all comes back to basically humor that I've enjoyed since I was a 13-year-old.
What shows did you watch back then?
This is the subject of a lot of debate and judgment, I would say, from my high school buddies, which is what were your go-to shows that you didn't tell anybody about. So when I was in Singapore, it was pretty limited. We basically had a lineup where it was like Eight is Enough, Love Boat, Battlestar Galactica, and Fantasy Island, I think, were the like the shows that we had access to. Now you may not even know what those are. You're too young.
Yeah, yeah. I
Uh,
was I was waiting for you to say All in the Family.
Okay, that was when I came back. So it was limited actually when we were over there. But interestingly, we I used to listen to the radio, and I'd listen to these crazy British comedians who were hilarious. Little did I know that these guys were going to go on to make some of the best movies I've ever seen in my life. So these were guys like John Cleese,
Hmm.
and all these guys who made these
Faulty Towers.
Faulty Towers, exactly. So I got introduced to British humor because Singapore is a British colony at one point, and so that was really interesting for me. So that my kind of early formed notion of entertainment and comedy actually came from listening to the radio over there.
There's a few things the British do better than comedy. It's one of the best things that we inherited from them on our way out the door.
For sure. How about for you? What are your go-to techniques? I know going out working the vineyard, I know you like to knock out some sets of push-ups, but are there other things that you've picked up along the way that um, are helpful for you?
Yeah, I mean, not none of them all at once, but I mean, it started with, well, I mean, I'm using it to prop my laptop up right now, but I journal most mornings, and then I've got a New Morning Mercies devotional book that I read it as I journal, because it's kind of like the way that the New Morning Mercies is structured for you to kind of think about what you're reading as you go along, and then I try and read. I've got books throughout the house because it just to encourage me to read more instead of sitting down and watching TV as much.
Yeah.
Since Yeah, because it's so easy to just sit down.
That's a tough one for me. After
That's
a long work day, that's not part of my repertoire right now. Do you read in the morning? Do you read during the course of the day? When do you find that that's best for you?
I find it easiest when I read throughout the day. I've strategically slash just um, preemptively just like put books out throughout the house. Like this one's on my desk, but then I do my journaling from the New Morning Mercies in the morning, and then I devotional in the morning. Most mornings I try and do that at the same time in my devotional, and then I've got 3 rules. 12 Rules for Life by Pearson is sitting next to my bed, and so I'm trying to read right now. I'm reading that while I'm going to sleep at night. And my dad wrote an incredible book that I'm slowly working my way through. It's about the Thehu, the squadron that flew right before the U.S. got involved in World War II, and it's a true story. I think the two main characters in the book are true people, but he turned them into characters so that it's you're reading about the squadron, but he inserted two people that were flew in other squadrons, and he inserted them into the book. But it's about the flying tigers, the Feihu, as the Chinese army called them, and they flew for 9 months leading up to the U.S. sending troops and getting involved into World War II after Pearl Harbor. And just an incredible story of bravery. The 100 servicemen, 100 boxed up P-40 aircraft that got sent over, and they signed their lives away for 9 months and flew for the Chinese for 9 months before the war.
That's amazing, man. I'm gonna get
Yeah,
that book name from you when we wrap here. Maybe you can text it over to me. I'd love to check that
yeah,
out.
it's a I grew up watching a lot of World War II movies and learning a lot of stories. So I had a basic understanding of the squadron before, but that's one I'm reading through right now. But yeah, sorry, long answer to your question. But yeah, that's one thing I've tried to get into doing more is just focusing on reading more, at least before I sit down at the end of the day to
Yeah,
to watch a funny British comedy or two. Trying to get back into watching more positive comedy,
yeah,
just stuff where it's cleaner comedy or it's somebody I haven't watched or listened to before.
yeah.
Um,
I mean,
Georgia,
anything Monty Python, like yeah, for our family, that's like the go-to. Um, and those guys are absurdly funny.
yeah, they really are. It's incredible because if you look at their backgrounds, like you mentioned, Cleese, I mean, they all went to like Cambridge
Yeah,
and Harvard and whatever the other big one is in Britain. So like their backgrounds were not like it's not like they're a bunch of fools. They're actually
yeah,
all very smart, endowed people, but they just
yeah.
got
It hits the funny bone the right way for sure. Yes.
yeah, for sure. Well, man, I really appreciate you hopping on and spending so much time with me. And I
I don't know if I hit the mark on anything. Somehow I took us down a rat hole of my childhood experience in Singapore, but I think in some way it's related. I think my embracing of ancient wisdom probably had something to do with my exposure to the world's religions that were all there that I got exposed to at a formative age. But I really appreciate you. I appreciate our friendship and this little snapshot of the running dialogue that you and I have together. And you're definitely part of that network of people that just helps me to be connected to. And I think about the challenges that you're facing head on, how you live your life, and I know how important your faith is to you as well. And I respect all of that about you, man. And I'm just thankful for our friendship, and I really appreciate you taking the time to do this podcast and have me as a guest, especially in light of the fact that all the other people you've had on are like world renowned people. So I appreciate you, man.
Well, I'll say this one more time since I mentioned it to you before, but not on the call, which is, Lauren and I have had to put off some big adult decisions. I'm a big Jordan Peterson fan. He says that you're not a real adult until you've had children. He's really big on that. And he's something that I respect, so I take that very seriously. And that's something that I'm not a real adult yet, and you've been a very real adult for a long time now, and made some very mature decisions, and you've made two very mature decisions with your wife to have kids, and and you've done a fantastic job. And the fact that they love you and they're close to you and they want to be in your life still makes a big difference.
Yeah,
So
I
it
don't know if
says a
I
lot
agree
about
with
their character.
Peterson on that one fully, because I think there's so many people in life who maybe they're not parents themselves, but they play an important role in the formation of young people. And I can't imagine you as a part of your family not doing that in some way with nieces, nephews, cousins, whoever. And I know how important family is to you as well. So I would actually respectfully disagree with him on that one. Um, and there's a lot of people who are parents, and I'll put myself in this category, that maybe haven't done the most perfect job of all time, but I'm learning to appreciate the adult relationship that I have with my kids now, and having open dialogue about that, and
Mm.
seeing where their lives lead them, and kind of how they make choices, and what they, if they choose to have families, how they navigate through that as well. So that'll be an interesting phase in life. So I wouldn't necessarily subscribe to that, Josiah, because I think you probably have an impact on more young people than what you realize.
Thanks. I appreciate it. Definitely not planning on having kids anytime soon. We've got enough stuff going on, but
You have your children out there waiting to be made into wine.
yeah, yeah. I'm really fortunate that early on in my when my career I got to work as a leadership consultant in higher education, and I'm very proud of the fact that I still keep in contact with and have kids, who are 18, 19 years old who are starting their university experience, and they still reach out to me to this day. And
There you
when
go.
they see they're going to be in a city nearby me, or that I'm going, one of them reached out to me. He was doing a rotation in Houston where I'm getting treatment at right now. And he was like, "When are you coming back out here? Let's get food." And I'm like, it's really special that these people. I consulted for his university, University of Connecticut, a decade ago or something like that. And it's fun seeing where they are in their lives now versus where they were when they were,
You,
when I
you
first
never
met them.
know the impact that you have on young people. And I actually had a chance to reconnect with some people who, at a very early age, a formative age for me, gave me the gift of letting me know that they believed in me. They were tough on me, and these were coaches in this example, but I knew that they believed in me, and they told me that, and they challenged me. And I was able to reach back to a couple of them not long ago and thank them for that. And they were just blown away that I even, the thought of them that way. But of course you do. And so the impact you can have on young people, even in casual engagement, but certainly when you're if it's family or close acquaintances, you have a big impact on them. So I think we're proving Peterson wrong here with this part of the conversation. And you don't only become a full adult when you have your own kids. I think there's lots of ways to do the adulting.
Yeah, I agree. I agree.
Yeah, man.
But I said that more to let you know that what you've done as a parent, you beat up on yourself a lot for not having achieved that much or whatever that means. But like, um, I look at your impact and I look at the kind of impact that my dad's had on me and my five siblings. And I just, I'm just like, um, yeah, I mean, it's an incredible thing to give so much of yourself for somebody else and hope that they turn into something useful. But
I'm sure like in the case of my kids, I'm super, you know this, and I'm resisting the urge to brag about them, but I love them. I'm proud of them. I'm super thankful and grateful that they are in my life, and want to be close to myself, and to my wife, and their mom too. And they're good kids, and they have good priorities. And that's the best thing you can do if you just raise kids who kind of appreciate the life that they have, and have good objectives for their lives, and the rest of it they're going to do what they're going to do. And I don't worry about the day to day too much. That's for them to do. But I think they're good, well mannered people with good values.
yeah, hopefully they, like you, learn to, you know, support those around them and to be vulnerable and to keep laughing.
The laughter is definitely there, and a lot of times it's directed at me, and I'm okay with that.
You've assumed that role in the family now.
I have no problem with
You're the
that.
matriarch.
My dad did that gracefully as well. We used to bust his chops pretty good, and he always handled it well. So a good example for that.
I like it.
Yeah. Hey man,
Brother, thank you so
good time.
much.
No, thank you. This is awesome. Great to catch up as always, whether we're recording your podcast or just catching up one to one. It's always good to be with you. Appreciate it, man.
Take care, everyone. Take care,
Thanks.
brother.